Hello, everyone. John Drennan, sales manager at VIP Mortgage. I am here today with a near and dear friend of 10, 15 years, Mr. Sean Tanko, the owner of the law offices of Sean Tanko here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And he's today going to talk about why he decided to become an attorney, why he decided to specialize, and really just focus, I should say, on estate planning and probate. Now, like you said before our conversation started, now you have individuals that were clients of yours. Now you're talking to them through elderly care. You're also talking to, sadly, their heirs to the estates because maybe they've passed away. But once again, Sean Tanko, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thanks, John.
Awesome. Well, once again, Sean, you and I have known each other for many, many years. I wanted to have you in. I personally believe that everybody who owns a house, especially in probate states, but anywhere in the United States, you should have a trust. I always tell everybody your goal in life is to make sure your wishes are followed. And the only way that your wishes, if you do pass away and you have a house, cars, retirement money, whatever it is, if you want to make sure it goes to the right person. And I always jokingly say everybody has a crazy cousin Timmy, okay? And it's jokingly when I say that, people are like, no, it's my sister or my brother kind of thing. But, what you do is extremely, extremely important, Sean. And I'm just so glad you're here today. We're going to just let you take over. But really, I want everybody to know who Sean Tanko is. I want to let everybody know why you decided to become an attorney. And guess what? There's so many different types of attorneys, but you decided to really focus on probate and estate planning. So, once again, Sean, thank you for coming in, and the floor is yours. So tell me your history, tell me your journey.
I decided to go to law school in my previous career, and I was being pushed and pulled back and forth between getting an MBA or going to law school.
Okay.
My younger brother had already graduated from law school. We both went to the same undergrad, Creighton University back in Omaha.
That's a nice university. Good basketball team.
Great basketball team. Okay baseball team, but better basketball team.
Yes.
My stepfather is an attorney,
Okay.
also was a professor there at Creighton Law, but my mother's also an attorney.
Oh.
And so I sort of got different perspectives on practicing law. But after I went through law school, it was about a year later, my brother and I started talking about opening a practice together.
Oh.
And so he was already out here in Las Vegas.
Oh, there you go.
So he, in the early, mid-90s actually, when he graduated, he had a couple of professors say, get out to Las Vegas. It's a desert for attorneys. So he came out here and worked with a number of firms, doing estate planning, probate work, trust administrations. And the natural draw was there. So
Yeah.
my wife and I came out early in, actually not early, mid 2002.
Okay.
And
That's the year I came out too.
He and I worked together for a couple of years, passed the bar a couple of years later, and we ran an office together as brothers.
Oh, nice.
And it was an awesome experience. Learned a lot of information about the practice of law in general, but more importantly, treating clients and taking care of clients' needs when it comes to estate planning, but then also dealing with what happens in probate and how did we get here, and working through the court to handle those issues that pop up in probate. So it just seemed like a very personal line of business to be
Yep.
in with those letters JD behind your name.
Yeah.
And my brother then looked at opening an office. He and his wife had plans to be in Montana. Several years later, they opened up an office in Montana. We still do business quite a bit together. We've got shared clients between us, and we collaborate on estate planning. Not so much on the probate issues because it's two different states.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's how I landed out here.
Huh. Well, it's kind of weird is I came out here also. I was looking at 3 different areas of the country who are the fastest growing real estate industry in the industry. It was Charlotte, North Carolina, Phoenix, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada. And ironically, I had a family member who lived in Las Vegas at that time. So I was able to, crash on the couch for 6 months. So same kind of concept.
Mm-hmm.
You already had your, you had your law degree. You wanted to do something, and where are you going to go? And it was an easy move out here. I like that. And you know what? I really want to focus on that estate planning because many years ago, my wife and our family trust. And it's so very important not only to explain the importance of a family trust, especially in the state of Nevada, okay, but also explain that it's not just one and done. I've had to come back to you over the years, had some different things change. Unfortunately, had to write some people out of the family trust and everything. But it's important to maintain it. And, you don't wait till the check engine light comes on and the engine blows. The check engine light comes on, you got to go ahead and say, hey, and then take it to the mechanic. Same kind of concept. You have a check engine light event happen in your life. If for some reason somebody passes, if for some reason somebody's done some really bad things and you don't want them to be part of your life, you got to go back in and make sure that everything's up to date, because one thing that we're not guaranteed, Sean, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So tell me about that. Tell me the importance of estate planning, protecting assets, making sure, especially when you have young children, making sure that the person who's going to take care of them after you pass tragically or something, that you're not planning when you got a 5 and 7 year old or something like that. So, let's talk about that subject matter.
Well, it starts with getting to know your client. Having not just a one and done meeting, but getting to know their family, getting to know their extended family, understanding what their goals are, and trying to match an estate plan that fits those goals. And as life, as you mentioned, moves forward, goals change, families change. And so I'd say it's probably 50-50 between my clients that, once I set up their trust, I may not see or hear from them for quite some time. But most of my clients, better part of 50%, will have updates, have changes. The way I practice in the area of estate planning, I don't want my clients to specifically mention children all the time. We'll talk about them as a class, particularly for my younger clients. Because as they start out, they may have one child or no children. But I don't want to see them having to come back and see me every year that they have another child. So in order to keep expenses down for them, we'll use some class language in talking about their children. My older clients, it's quite predictable they're not going to have any more children. And so they may mention their children by name, but it's very case specific to the clients. But we try and plan accordingly so that there's some depth to their estate plan, so that as life changes, they're not required to always come in. They may come in and just discuss matters with us, changes in their life. Do we need to tweak this or tweak that? And it's very case specific, I guess, is what it comes down to.
One size does not fit all.
Yeah,
everybody's situation is different.
This is specific to the trust,
of course.
Right? I have some clients that will do just wills. And they'll do a will mainly because they're not holding real estate. Real estate is that one particular asset, whether it's an individual or a married couple. If we don't do something about it, it's going to end up in probate. And so I visit and counsel a lot of people on the fact that just because you own your home in joint tenancy doesn't mean it may not end up in probate. And a will doesn't keep you out of probate. In the state of Nevada, real estate is always going to be the subject matter of the court. Certainly, if we have assets over a certain value, that's going to drag us into court when we just have a simple will. So it's guiding clients with the types of assets that they own and how they should be managing those assets within their estate plan.
Perfect. So you touched on a couple of matters that were very important that I wanted to talk about. Number one, a will. So will is a legally binding document in the state of Nevada, and that's going to be mainly for somebody who doesn't have assets over a certain dollar amount, and mainly for somebody who doesn't have real property. Maybe it's just somebody, I have an aunt that she's never owned a house. She worked for the government. I think the only thing she's really ever owned in her life is like a car, and that's perfectly fine. She's retired, the whole 9 yards. If she lived in Nevada, a simple will might suffice, okay? Yeah. But as soon as you start throwing in the assets over a certain limit, as soon as you start throwing in real property, if not, it goes to probate. Now, probate is a kind of a scary word, and a lot of people don't even understand what that means. So let's talk about an individual has assets over a certain limit, has some real property, is married, maybe has kids, maybe doesn't have kids, maybe has step kids, maybe has, biological kids. All of a sudden they die. And everybody goes, who owns the house? Well, it's just dad. Dad owned the house, not in a trust, not anywhere, and it goes to probate. What does that mean?
So probate it's a specialty court. And here in the state of Nevada, particularly to Clark County, we have an individual called the probate commissioner. And he serves in that position as an employee of the court. He serves under 3 different judges. that our probate cases are divided up amongst. And as you pointed out, we're in front of this commissioner because we're dealing with something, an asset over a certain value, that needs to have the direction of the court. We're either going to follow the terms of a will and with respect to who's the executor, who gets what, or we're going to be doing something without a will, what we call an intestate administration. And in the state of Nevada, if you are a resident of the state of Nevada, you are qualified to be an administrator. That's the title we give somebody when there isn't a will. They have the same powers, same duties, same obligations. And then, when we're dealing without a will, we're going to be going through the statutes to determine who are these beneficiaries. You outlined a person, a single individual, passed away. Did they have kids? If they didn't have kids, are their parents still alive? If their parents aren't alive, do they have siblings? And there's a whole checklist that we get to go through in order to determine who are the beneficiaries. And that's in a short version of what happens in probate. There's a lot of other steps to probate, particularly if we're dealing with real estate. We might be coming back before the court to sell that property. And then certainly there's a petition to close the estate. And in the state of Nevada, we have basically three different types of estates.
Okay.
We have a one and done when we're dealing with what we'll call a set-aside administration. And with or without a will, we're getting that property to the next of kin. Okay? Doesn't involve selling anything. Generally, it's a transfer. Okay? And there are some particularities to that statute that are preferential to a surviving spouse and minor kids, to the detriment of creditors. The other types of probates are much more involved, and they are either a summary or a general administration. Whether you have a will or you don't have a will, they track the same timeline. Okay, so we're opening it up. We're getting somebody in control, and that person then has the ability to close accounts. Through my office, we provide notice to creditors. We're assisting our client, the administrator executor, in trying to figure out what we're dealing with, so we can be in a position of either transferring the property or even going through that process of liquidating that property. As I mentioned before, real estate, if it is going to need to be sold because of claims or how the property is divided, we're going to have to sell it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We do an inventory. And there's some other actions that may or may take place depending on the complexity of the case. But the final draw would be closing the estate and doing a final distribution. And that's where we're paying claims and bills and creditors and dividing the estate up amongst the beneficiaries.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So you got somebody with a will, some properties, assets, no, ironclad revocable trust. What if the heirs and the beneficiaries don't agree? Then who comes in? Is that where the commissioner comes in? Is that where you as the attorney come in? So how does that work? So you just, they just completely disagree, and is there a formula that there's not an exact formula because every situation is different, but what happens if somebody won't sign off? Can the commissioner say this is 50-50 and we're closing this thing out? How does that work?
We could ask the court for instructions. Judge, what do we do? We've got this problem with property and how it's to be distributed. Generally, if there's some sort of a contest or conflict amongst the beneficiaries, folks have all retained counsel.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to figure out what is the best way to resolve this without having to go through litigation, particularly when the statute's pretty clear. And your question is pretty broad, but it could be, who gets the car?
Yeah. Who
right?
gets the
and
65 Mustang?
Yeah. And how do we value that asset?
Yeah.
If someone wants the car, we want to make sure the other party gets their fair value. And that doesn't matter whether it's a car or house or jewelry. Those are all things that I've dealt with in probate. It sometimes does come down to litigation and just matters of opinion that are just too far apart.
Yep.
But like I said, instructions from the court is sometimes the best way we can proceed without having to go to some sort of an evidentiary hearing, which is just adding layers and layers of cost and expense.
Well, I was just going to say, so if you don't have much and you don't own a house, a will, state of Nevada is going to be acceptable. If you have a house or assets exceeding certain limits, you need that revocable trust. Why revocable? So you can make changes to it. Okay. Right. Then from there, it goes to probate. Then from there, it goes to litigation and probate. And as you can see, we're starting getting more expensive. And when it's all said and done, the person who's passed away does not get the ability to make sure that his or her wishes are being followed. And it's a free-for-all. And everybody gets nasty and everybody's out for blood. And it's just like, you should be mourning the loss of your loved one, not trying to figure out how you can get a one-up on your cousin or your brother or someone like that. It befuddles me. It frustrates me. But this is why I tell everybody who owns a house should have a revocable trust. 100%, no questions asked, just do it. Because the cost is not cheap. Nothing in the world's cheap, right? But you talk about perspective of cost and value, the cost is significantly less than going to probate 20, 30 years down the road. Plus, once again, your wishes aren't being followed.
Yeah. Here in Clark County, the most populous county in the state, we have one person that hears these cases. And, on any given Friday, there might be 150 to 200 cases
Holy moly.
that are passed through the probate office for that Friday hearing. So you can kind of get a sense for the types of cases that are being opened, closed, property being sold, disputes being handled. The benefit of having a trust is avoiding that waste of time.
And money.
And money. Probate court, and we're about to have hopefully a second commissioner here in Clark County.
Oh, nice.
Which will alleviate some of that backlog. But between attorney's fees, the costs of probate, and the time that probate court consumes, having a trust in place can circumvent that whole process. Now, don't get me wrong. You can still have a dispute in a trust. You could end up in probate court. Our court has jurisdiction over trust, and there's a way to get those trusts in front of the court for determining an issue. But most trusts, if properly drafted, avoid that process.
Well, yeah, you got to figure, you're almost got like, if you own a real property and your assets are in excess of certain limits, you're almost guaranteed to go to probate. If you have a really, really good, well-written trust, there's a slight chance that if the heirs and the beneficiaries want to fight, it can go to court and everybody's going to get paid and everybody's going to, attorneys going to get paid and stuff like that. The whole point is the avoidance of it.
Yeah.
The avoidance of it. Okay, so let's talk about another very, very significant subject matter. Let's talk about these clients that you've had for 20 years. They were in their 30s and 40s and 50s. Now all of a sudden they're significantly older, okay? Let's talk about, what you can do and what your law firm does to help with elderly care, to, combat elderly abuse and things like that, to protect them, not only because it's the right thing to do, and there's just a lot of bad people out there that take advantage of the less fortunate, but it's something that you have evolved into because when they came to you 20 years ago, that wasn't part of it. Now, all of a sudden, now they are 60, 70, 80 years old. How are you helping them?
Well, many times as my clients have aged, their family members are becoming intimately involved in their care or being intimately involved in supporting their care. I think all of us would enjoy certain autonomy and freedom to live without restriction.
Correct.
And what I see happening in my practice, if it's not updating some of the more common documents, powers of attorney, because maybe a child or a person who's close to my client is now within reach, physical reach of them, they want that person to be by their side, either to help manage finances or manage expenses that they may have. But more importantly, maybe possibly make medical decisions.
Exactly.
If they become incapacitated, which is part of the estate plan, getting those other documents in place so that, our hope is we're not going to have to deal with a guardianship. That's that place that we go, similar to probate court, when a person can't take care of themselves. And so not a cheap process, not a fun process to be in for the family because you're really splitting the family up in discussing the individual interests of those family members and caring for that parent, caring for that family member. That's what I see happening right now in my practice is sort of come full circle in working with clients that are now experiencing new needs.
Yep. Yep. I love it. I love it. Once again, you're caring about the individual, you're caring about the family, and you did it from start to finish. And that's part of it. I want to touch on one last thing. And you've got over 20 years experience, been out here in Las Vegas. You're doing extremely well, helping so many different people. But I want to talk about the one thing that you do that separates you from your quote unquote competition. And in reality, you're not really in competition. Everybody has a specialty. Everybody does their thing. Hey, let them do what they do. But you actually, to this day, still do house calls, and you still go to hospitals or, long-term care facilities and help people make those final decisions as long as they're capable. So let's talk about that, because let's be honest, we're talking about the individuals who are getting older. They maybe need a revocable trust done now. Yep. They may need to have some significant changes. And you know what? I do reverse mortgages for clients, and I love helping my senior citizens, and I go to them. Okay. Some of them, they're technologically advanced. They're good. They don't need that. But those are the clients that I go to. If you are immobile or you are a reverse mortgage client, I'll go to your house. But you do this on the regular. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of colleagues that will refer business to my office because it's just not part of their business plan. Doing house calls, doing hospital visits, could be something very simple. Somebody's had, a medical event, and they want to get some powers of attorney put in place because they don't know what the future holds. Most of the time, folks are now all of a sudden very clear about their health, very clear about life, and maybe have put it off. The statistics say that about 80 or mid 84, 85% of us don't have any type of estate plan at all. And so it really brings a lot of personal joy to me to work with individuals who, okay, the light bulb is on. I got to get something put together. I'm trying to take care of my spouse. I'm trying to take care of my children, or I don't have kids, and I want these close friends of mine to enjoy the property, the assets that I have. So
charitable foundations. I know a lot of people do that. They have a certain percentage going to charitable foundations. Maybe there's something near and dear to their heart, or maybe it's something where they volunteered at over the years.
Yeah. I have a number of clients who maybe never got married, never had kids. They don't have siblings or parents, obviously, at an older age that are alive that they could leave property to, that will divide up their estate amongst charities. If you can think of it as a charitable foundation or a charitable business, my clients have come up with it.
Yeah.
So there's some very, very popular ones, obviously.
Of course.
But that's always a factor in estate planning, is making sure that they're taking their wealth and doing some good in their community, if they chose not to leave it to individuals.
Yeah, no. You know what? And like I said, I want everybody to understand the importance of a trust. It protects you while you're living. It protects you when you're gone. And it really leaves a legacy in your words. Every state's going to have different rules and different laws that you have to abide by. Like you said, you and your brother still do a little bit of reciprocation, but the laws in the state of Montana are going to be completely different than down here in Nevada. But if you own a home and you do not have a trust, my question is why? You can say, well, John, it's the cost. Of course, there's a cost. There's a cost to every single thing we do. But guess what? The cost of probate, the cost of litigation after the fact. Protect your assets, protect your wishes, protect your beneficiaries to make sure that crazy cousin Timmy doesn't come out of the woodwork. Yeah. My father passed away many years ago, and my mother and my father had a discussion about when he passed, what were some of the things that she was going to do with the life insurance policy to, put everything in line. And this was when I was 18 years old. And my mother and her sister did not speak for years because she said, John would never have allowed this. And my mom said, he was my husband of all these years. You don't think we had conversations exactly what we were going to do to put the kids in a better position with college and transportation, et cetera? And she felt she knew more. Once again, crazy cousin Timmy. Yeah. Crazy cousin Timmy was not part of that conversation, did not know the wishes. So, Sean, what you do, I admire you. You are a professional. You've helped a lot of my clients. You help individuals. Once again, the house calls are huge. Helping families when medical events happen, you go to them. They don't have to come to you. And you've really educated us on the importance of a trust, asset protection, also wills, trust, probate, litigation. Once again, everybody, cost goes up. And we want to make sure that everything's done the right way. Nothing is foolproof. There's no one size fits all, but once again, I appreciate you coming in today, really explaining where the passion for law came from your family. You had a couple forks in the road and you went this direction versus that. Awesome. And here you are many years later, a lawyer, a husband, a father, some great children. And once again, we've been friends for many years.
Thank you, John.
Awesome.
Thank you.